We have a quorum?
We did 4.
All right, so, being that we have a quorum, I hereby bring this meeting to order with the Bastrop Government Corporation Board of Directors. So, anyone have any public comments?
We got 2 from the public, 1 from the public. Any public comments? Then we're good to go.
All right, regular business. We have the oaths of office.
Yeah, Willie has filled his out. The other 3 of y'all have not. Before you get out of here tonight, you have a statement of elected appointed officer and an oath of office that the city secretary would like you to sign, fill out. Angela will notarize them for you, and so I can get off of her hit list of people she's looking for. It's really saying that y'all are on this board and that you swear to uphold what it says. So I need to get those back, and then, where's the one that's highlighted? Our bonds, let me get a pen. Yes, sir. Our bonds are up for renewal.
It says I didn't pay anyone to be on this board.
Oh, you didn't get paid? You didn't?
You didn't get yours, what happened?
Also in your packet, and we have more copies, our bond application,
You want this as of today?
yes,
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
no, fine. Is an EDC application for bond. We traditionally have bonded the officers of the corporation, and that's what the bylaws say. We had some discussion during the budget process that we budgeted enough money to bond all of the board members as well as staff that have any fiduciary duty to the corporation. This provides you that fiduciary protection. If you so desire to be included in the bonding of the EDC, we have the highlighted form of what I need filled out so that I can get it to Ashley. I will pass this over to you with the extras. Do not write on the highlighted one. We will fill in all the corporate information for you so that, and get them down to Ashley and to the Nietzsche group who provides our bonding. I did.
I think we have to just pass this down, because this yellow one tells us what it is.
So that is everything that I need on 3.1, and I am ready to move on with y'all all.
Okay, so you want us to sign, or you fill these out?
Yeah, I need you to use that as a sample, and there's one right there. I just need the yellow information, and then we will fill out in your signature in the bottom right-hand corner, and we will fill out all the corporate information with Ashley so that we get it, you bonded to the BEDC to cover your fiduciary duty. It is good practice to bond all of the board members, and it's probably something in the next bylaw revision that we need to include just because of some of the litigation that's going on.
That's good.
Skip that one because I knew Steve's address. I didn't know if that's right. Steve's. Thank you very much.
I have a bag full.
That's all.
Six plus.
Thank you, sir.
Did you sign one of these?
Oh, did I give you a blank? Sorry.
Will you give me your notary book?
These are yours.
I've got it.
Here, just needs to fill out.
One more signature, Sue.
Show them.
Right there in the notary book.
was the conference?
It was good. Probably the most significant thing that came out of it was a site selection meeting with the guy from JLL. He has a lot of interest in some projects in Austin. So we'll have a couple of company leads for locations out of Chicago, out of the suburbs that are looking at Texas, that we'll take a look at here in the next couple of months to see how serious they are. So, and we're still waiting on the bulk lead generation won't be to us for another couple of weeks, but we'll take a look at the bulk lead generation in a couple of days and see who's a prospect. I know one of our contractors that was working the show for us has at least one lead that they're serious about being in the Austin Metro and took our information with them, so.
I think I did this right. I filled in all the areas in yellow.
Yes, we'll do that, then we will fill in all the corporate information, and you can just hand that to me, and I will put it in the stack.
Thank you.
How are you, Gary?
I'm doing good. One problem I got to put up with this guy 2 days in a row. Can you imagine that?
Y'all are gonna make the
Maybe
meeting.
not, might not.
The
You're not
meeting,
gonna be there tomorrow?
Maybe pushing it tomorrow.
the meeting tomorrow's gonna be short, Gary, right? Hour and 15 minutes.
I don't know. It seems like the ones with the least agenda have the most time involved, don't they?
All right, we gotta go. 3.2.
This is for you to fill in.
Anybody have any comments or discussion items on the minutes?
They're really long.
Anybody have
I move.
motion?
Second approve.
And we have a second from Doug.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Action accepts the BEDC's financial summary report. Okay, so I guess we better hear the summary report.
So this is for the month ending October 31st, the first month of this fiscal year. Revenues of almost 8%, 153,000. Expenditures of 89,000, or roughly 4.6% of budget. Sales tax collections were actually down year over year a little bit in October. November was actually considerably up, so I think we're sitting a little bit better than even at the current moment on sales tax collections. The overall revenue chart, which looks a lot like, or this is sales tax revenue, shows a little better, that it was down a little bit. Expenditure chart, we did ask for more vibrant colors this year. Hopefully this is easier to read, and finance was more than happy to oblige us. Obviously, most of our monthly expenses are debt service, personnel, maintenance and occupancy, contractual services, and then 12% for the other. Looking at our expenditures, we're running right about where we normally would within the year. And then within the unaudited fund balance at the end of September 30th was 2.6 million. Budgeted revenues of 1.9, expenditures of 1.9, leaves us about 2.6 million less our restricted reserve funds for available cash.
What is it? It's 90-day, what's the dollar amount?
The 90-day at this current moment is
Okay, sorry, I didn't see
483,250.
it.
We have some other restricted fund, or other long-term liabilities that need to be added to that, but I think my understanding from finance is the way that they're accounting for they is totally different, because we budget those whenever we're paying them out anyway, and so there's no reason to restrict them if we're gonna put it in the 1.93 whenever we're doing
Or the
a.
current budget.
Yep, exactly. And so 90 days at this current moment is 483. Any questions on the financials?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask a question real quickly on page 19. I know we're compared to last year, the numbers were pretty close, a little higher than 14s. I'm just trying to explain, or trying to understand the numbers from 14, 15, and 16, where it showed like, would that be a misprint in 14, in May of 14? We had 356, and then last year we had 177. That's pretty, any, and the reason I was saying, I was just trying to figure out what Mike was talking about at the meeting, 1 or 2 meetings ago about our sales tax across the state, is probably the area. Gary, you remember that comment about sales taxes on the decline maybe, but didn't we have a last report on ours
Was up.
was up pretty good?
We just said,
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I just wanna,
the difference between 14 and 15, that's at 356 month. We had to have had the sale of some kind of land that we were bringing
That's what it
in
was.
cash. And so we actually received that as revenue and
instead
then.
of sales tax,
Yep,
showed it
and then-
instead of.
Yep, because that's total revenues, which would be the sale of a piece of property that we bring in. It may be put on as a long-term liability, but then whenever we go out and pay the incentive on that piece of land, if there's an incentive agreement, it goes out through expenses.
So something like that could have been the same cause in the month of August in those 2 years as well, 14 and 15, where
Correct.
it spiked about 100,000.
That's why whenever you flip over to 20, that's a straight-up sales tax chart, which is sales tax collections. It does not include all revenues. One of the other things that's going on this year in our cell tower lease, instead of us booking all of that revenue simultaneously, we receive it all at a single point, but they're now also, they're holding it in a restricted account, and they're allocating it to the month, because it's a month-to-month contract, and so every month, the 69,000 divided by the 3 years? 5 years, we receive that in revenues now versus what had previously been done. That was a finance change. I don't argue with them, Steve. I would have booked it all as revenue in the month it came in on a cash basis and been
It's an
done.
annual payment, right?
Well, yes.
It's an annual payment.
It's basically 60 months, and so we're gonna, 69,000 divided by 60 months, and every month we're gonna recognize a little bit of 69,000.
Okay.
I moved to accept the financial report.
one second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Next item. Internal financial control policy number 3. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Let's skip it. So, in visiting with the finance department, internal financial control policy number 3, that 483,000, or the 90-day number of our reserve restricted funds. One of the things that the city's finance policy allows the city to do is to purchase other instruments other than just being in pooled cash or in a bank account. And the finance department came to us and said, hey, would you like to buy some certificates of deposit and get a little bit better interest than on that 500,000 or 483,000 and some change, or some number like that? And so we asked JC to kind of develop a internal financial control policy that basically the board chair, executive director, and director of finance in compliance with the city of Bastrop's finance policy can place those funds in some type of alternative investment instrument that pays better interest. And so that's what internal financial control policy number 3 says.
And this is an internal policy as to EDC,
Yep, specifically to the EDC.
all right?
Why would we want to put it in I'm just, and the benefit of this is?
It will pay a little bit better interest, not a whole lot more, but it'll generate a little bit more revenue. It'll be secure cash. It'll also separate it on the balance sheet from pooled cash and our checking account, so that whenever you look at the balance sheet, you can go, this is what our 90-day is, and it's really that reserve and restricted funds that, unless we declare an extringency, we should not get into spending that
Or
cash.
you're getting a penalty if you give a 90-day certificate or whatever. I mean, you can't, if you had to get into it, you get penalized for.
Well, and we can also collaborate, if we need to get into it, we can collateralize it with the bank and access it that way. What they're probably going to want to do is set up some type of CD ladder to where we
And
divide it.
who are we talking to about this?
The finance department has recommended it to us, and we're bringing it to the board. We'd probably go to one of the local banks to purchase the CDs at some rate better than we make on any of our other interest-bearing accounts.
Personally, I don't know enough about this.
unusual.
I'd like to
I've just
visit with the
never-
finance department and find out a little bit more about
Yeah,
that.
I've never heard of a city telling someone to take their money and go put it in the bank somewhere. It just, I'd like to defer this also, ask some more questions. It
Yep.
doesn't mean it's wrong, I'm just surprised.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a pretty standard policy. The city on their balance sheet has certificates of deposit that already do the same thing. The EDC is just not authorized to do this at this moment. My last community, it's what we did with our reserve and restricted funds, was kept them in a certificate of deposit. They pay a little bit more than 1% versus what you'll get in Tex Pool or Texas Class, which will be 0.01, 0.02,
Why would we
0.03.
not do this?
I just want to know a little bit more about it. I'm not sure that I understand it that well. I mean, yes, I understand certificates of deposit, and I
There's no
understand the
regs.
90-day,
So
but
we
is it,
have
I mean, if you put it in certificates of deposit, and you find that you need it, you're going to pay a penalty for getting it out. So I'm just
You might
wondering.
lose your interest, but if you're not earning any interest on it, which at .0001, you're not really earning any interest, even if you had to give it all up.
I don't know that. I don't know that we're not earning any interest. I don't know
Well,
anything
we're
about it.
earning
It's,
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
minute,
yeah.
Yeah, I've never
interest.
examined it.
It's
That's-
a 1/10%, or, I mean, what we earn in pooled cash is a very small amount. And all we're talking about is, at this point, is the 483,000 that would be reserved or restricted.
can we just instruct Sean to go to the banks and find out what they would pay in interest and how long we'd have to have the money tied up?
And
No.
what we're
Bring it
getting,
back next
what
time.
we're getting.
No,
and
what we do is table this till the next time, so we can ask some questions, have some discussions.
You were not listening.
But that
You let me
will
finish.
happen in the
No,
interim.
no, let me finish. We instruct Sean to go to the banks, ask them how much interest we will get, bring it to the next meeting with a report. Okay, here's what we can get with our money. We won't approve anything today, but we'll know next time. This is what
You
we.
can get that online, I mean.
All right, go ahead and get it. I'm
Okay.
just, if you,
It is
Can I
not,
can I ask one question? And you're talking about going out to banks, and I'm gonna assume since the bank, I'm gonna say First National Bank is our city's depository, probably where our money's kept. I mean, has anybody approached them to see what you were talking about? You brought up a good question. If you got a 90-day CD, usually they'll charge you a penalty if you go in and take that money out. But has anybody asked that question, of, say Reed or anybody at the bank, that if we had a large sum of money, which they have a large sum of our city money in there, would they charge us a penalty if we did that?
Yeah, I mean,
That's the question I think needs to be asked as well.
Again, what I'm hearing is that we're putting it in a pool of money with the city that's not paying us any interest. I don't know that. I
Yeah.
don't know that it's not paying.
Well,
us
that's the
any
next question I was
yeah,
gonna ask.
what we're actually doing, what the auditors have instructed us to do, with the resolution that follows this up, our pooled cash is actually kept with the city's pooled cash currently, and the auditors have instructed us to separate our pooled cash from the city of Bastrop, because the city of Bastrop has an EIN number, and the EDC has an EIN number, and we're not to commingle those funds. And this is just a part of the separation of funds from the city of Bastrop. So our
Okay, well, so
cash-
you just hit on something again that I've heard nothing about until now. It seems like we've touched on it from time to time. But if there's an auditor's report about that, I want to see it, because I want to understand exactly what they're saying to us about commingling our funds with theirs. I've never heard of this before. It's funny that we're just hearing it now. You got any comments on that,
And on
J.C.?
paper, on an accounting ledger, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
I have not seen the auditing report for the BEDC. I do know that, I believe the council took action to approve the Texas class for the city's portion of the investment last time, so we can certainly get someone here to give you more information about this next
I would
time.
like for the board to hear
Sure.
firsthand from the finance group, if they want to just send us a note about it or whatever they want to do, but I want to hear firsthand from them. And I would like to hear about this commingling. And that's not a very good word. to
It's
say.
not really.
It's a pooling. I know it's
Yeah.
a pooling of funds. But if the auditors are saying that as a policy, you should not be doing that, I want to know why you should not be doing it.
If it's
Because
a
it seems to me that
comment or
you
a
would
letter
have,
or-
you would have a lot more economies of scale by pooling and getting the maximum amount of interest by the pool, instead of separating us, from, say, you got $1.5 million or $2 million worth of operating funds, and you're putting that in a pool. You would think you'd be garnering the maximum amount of interest you could in an account like that. And so I just want to know the answers to that.
I agree. And
There
then
should be something in writing that
Yeah.
would have generated this whole discussion,
Yeah.
that either
yeah,
came to
and
the
I'm sure there
city
is.
or.
Yeah, finance called us and said, hey, we think that this is the direction we need to head. It's the direction we're getting from our auditors, that the separation of pooled cash, because you're an entity, a nonprofit corporation, and we're government. We both have separate EIN numbers, both tax reporting numbers, where we file a 990 and they do not. And it's not good practice for the EDC to commingle their
The
funds.
990, meaning what form is that?
It's our IRS tax reporting form. We file a 990 for being a 501c.
Okay, it's 501c3. Yeah.
Where we're filing with IRS and the city does not. So that's the general,
it's just odd because, it's not that hard to keep money separate on a
Yep.
accounting wise. So-
Why don't we get with Tracy Waldron
Well-
and get the backup?
Okay,
and
that,
get y'all
my
the-
question also is, if fluidity is important, do we want to stagger, if we go with this route, stagger it into different CDs every 30 or 60 days, something matures, rather than,
And then you want to put it in one bank, or do you want to
I
spread
know,
it
it's
around
like
to the
a
community
whole
banks?
nother little Pandora's box.
well, with the internal financial control policy, basically Tracy Waldron and the board chair and the executive director would then look at what the options were with the various banks, and she puts it out to bid and goes, hey, what will you pay us if we build a CD ladder of 400,000, 125,000 CDs over 2 years, coming due every 6 months. And then we look at what our options are.
Well, it sounds like it's got a lot of potential, and I think we'll take a look at it. But I want to just get down into a little bit more detail about this, understand it a little bit more, particularly on the financial controls they're asking us and the auditing issues that they're bringing up.
Well, the only thing extra you're probably gonna get is probably, you need to see a letter from the auditor or some from her department that states that, because she didn't offer much information at our meeting other than the city needed to invest its money elsewhere other than textbook, because we weren't making that much in interest. So she's not gonna offer a whole lot more than he just did, so. But if you want, I think you need to see a letter from somebody that states
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah,
talking about
I
tonight.
do. I'd like to see that on the effect of the pooling, and if we pull out of that pooling and we start making our own decisions, are there downside risk to that, as any CD is, if you had to go use that cash, and if you have to cashier a CD at an early date prior to maturity, you're gonna get a penalty. It's not just loss of interest, you're gonna get a penalty. That's traditional. Now, you might be able to negotiate a different deal, and that's a whole nother issue,
Well, and with
Who's
that,
gonna be negotiating?
and with that, all we're talking about is the 90-day restricted funds. The balance then would go into a separate pooled cash account in the EDC's EIN number. So we'd pull 500,000 in general terms out for the CDs, and then there would be 2.1 million that would go into a separate pooled cash account of the EDC. And then we'd maintain our operating account that has 100,000 on any given day, and it depending upon what our transfers look like on a monthly basis.
Well, I just think there's a whole lot of movement here. I'd like to learn a little bit more about it.
Okay, we'll get with finance and get Tracy to come and explain their reasoning and get y'all the backup.
And I don't mind, between now and the next meeting, having a meeting with Tracy and perhaps Mike involved in it, and just air this so that I understand it a little better, and and be able to present to the board. So
I would feel better if you did.
All right, well, I'm happy to do that. So Sean and I, and Mike and Tracy can kind of get together and talk about that. Anybody else that you got, Gary, if you want to.
I should probably be in on that.
Food, candy. All right.
Getting kind of things back at 6:30.
Okay, 4.2.
I tried to get them to hold up for you, but
This meeting started at 6?
you
told me
wanted 6 o'clock meetings.
I asked her 6:30. She
You wanted
said
6 o'clock
6:30.
meetings, you got a 6 o'clock meeting.
I would have been here at 6. She called me today and I said 6:30. She said yes.
I thought you asked for a 6 o'clock meeting 2 months ago. That's okay, we're here, we're
We
ready.
haven't covered that.
We're done.
We're done, we're almost ready to go home.
If we're done, that's fine. I just want to report to you that she said that she called me and I said, tonight at the city
Tell
council.
them you didn't know what time we started.
And she said yes.
So the question is this a regular time now?
That's what y'all, when we came to y'all in September, everybody agreed on the 6 o'clock.
Yes,
Moving
it is
around.
a regular time.
Okay, okay,
You like it at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay.
it's fine.
I think we all
Sooner you
agree
get here, the
6
sooner you get
is-
home.
I mean, I wasn't here, but that's what y'all, keep them.
Can you
Okay.
get here from work?
Next.
Well,
4.2, presentation discussion on development of western Colorado River retail.
there you go, Mary, you got here in time for your,
So we had, if y'all been reading the director's reports that have been coming out on a fairly regular basis, we had quite a few agenda items, and so we had one get scratched when Carlos left the board for this meeting, but this one was requested by the mayor, Development Western Colorado, and the presentation and discussion of this, and so we kind of went through the current project report from the city of Bastrop and kind of mapped all of these out in their general locations and where the current projects are. The stars are some form of commercial development ongoing in the city. The X's are the general location of residential developments that are either under development or in some form of pre-development stages. Some of them are more advanced than others. The diamonds are multifamily projects that are in some form of pre-development at this point. The only other major project that's on the report is the plus sign up there, which is the Art Guild's facility downtown. And then the two black boxes on Highway 71 are kind of the construction zones for the Tahitian Drive and the 95 overpass. And what we're seeing through the construction reports and what we know is in pre-development today. Singularly, these are all pretty interesting projects, but combined, they're game-changing projects for Bastrop and where we're going long-term because they represent quite a number of new households. They represent quite a number of new commercial businesses in Bastrop, both on the retail and industrial side of what we do. And so, and what's driving the development on the retail side and what we traditionally know is rooftops, and for housing, it's jobs. And we're still seeing good job creation in the primary sector, and we're seeing a lot of interest in the marketplace, and we'll talk about that in executive session, the projects that we're actively working with that have legs and seem to be moving at this point and have opportunities for us. Our concern at this point as EDC staff in visiting with the retail coach, our consultant on retail development in Bastrop, who works with us and our local developers and other developers that are interested in the market. We have a lot of concern. The red line there is basically our western trade boundary for our retail trade area. The 130 basically creates an artificial barrier for us. People don't really travel east of 130 to come to Bastrop, and it kind of cuts off there. The two tan X's, the top one there in the north is the inland surf park being developed by the Coors family. That's under construction at the moment, slated to open sometime next year is my understanding. The lower X is the Circuit of the Americas track. The big red X there at the 71, 130 intersection is a 390 acre commercial mixed-use development that's going to be anchored with retail and casual dining. That in the next 3 to 5 years, the retail coach and us both agree that could be a game-changing project for Bastrop in a not so positive way. They will attract, if you go up to Pecan Park on 130 in Pflugerville and see the retail that's in there, it will attract similar retail to that, as well as they're marketing it to some of the mid-tier retailers that are out there that we have not yet to attract. Our fear is if that development gains leg, is our retail, and the retail coach supports this, and some of the developers we've talked to, that our retail or western trade line will actually move back someplace closer to Bastrop, and we'll get cut off between, there'll be a new trade area developed between 130 and Cedar Creek, in which that Del Valley area, that 71 130 will be the hub of that trade area. And so what that means for us, and it plays into the retail development and what we're working on with our role in retail, is after ICSC a couple weeks ago, we know that we've got to identify and do a better job at assembling data on available developable tracts in Bastrop. There is a lot of interest from current as well as potential developers to come in here, because we already have an existing trade market that is attracting consumers here, and we can possibly get out in front of the 71 and 130 development and at least delay that trade line shifting back to the east. Promoting mixed use and smart growth development, we get asked why a lot. It really is, when you go out and talk to consumers, the consumer preference to be able to eat and shop and live and work within a development. The increased density and the per acre value to the community is tremendous. I know Gary was at the Smart Growth seminar, and the gentleman pulled a couple of examples of Walmart's per acre value to the community versus a downtown business, and the downtown business was significantly greater, 100 times greater than Walmart's on a per acre basis. And so a little bit of density is not always a bad thing. And it also will solve some of our other problems, which is delivering multiple products to meet demand. As you saw on the map, we have within close proximity, there's one additional site, multifamily, to the west. Being able to do some type of planned development with multifamily and single family in it, and even some commercial office space, can help meet a little bit more of the demand that we're seeing in our office. We are going to have to work on our targeting of anchor tenants for the new development. Our trade area went from 160,000 last year. The new estimate's somewhere in about the 180,000 in Bastrop today, 183, 184,000. And so we've added about 20,000 population to the trade area. We're closing in on that 200,000 mark, which is kind of the benchmark for some of those new target anchors that would be attracted to Bastrop to be able to look at a new development. And so what we're doing with our strategy, unless we're told otherwise, is we've continued our relationship with the retail coach. Our developers here in town that have utilized their services have been pleased with their targeting and their communications with retailers that are interested in being in Bastrop. We did participate in ICSC a couple weeks ago. We find the Texas Real Estate Conference is actually a better venue for us than going to Vegas later in the year. These are developers that are actively working in the Texas market and have interest in being here. All of our scheduled meetings, 3 of the 4 of those, and the 4th to some degree, we're already looking at the market at some level for some type of development and wanted more information, particularly on available sites that fit their profile. We did have a trade show booth, which was very beneficial to us because we were not able to schedule meetings with everybody that's active in the market. For the 4 meetings that we were able to identify and schedule over that day and a half, we probably had another 12 to 18 that stopped by the booth that had some interest in being in Bastrop. In addition to that, we did some retailer networking, and we have a good idea of those anchor targets as well as the inline targets that make sense for Bastrop and where we can be. Developer and retailing targeting is really where we need to be focused here. We're only going to go to the Vegas show if a developer requests it, because we will be there to support them in selling to those target retailers. For us, as a community our size, we just get lost in the Vegas show. We're really there to support them in selling their developments. And then continue to improve our database of available developable tracts. I know we've got some new members that wouldn't know. ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers, and that is the preeminent organization within this sector. And I believe that is it from me.
So did you get, I mean, you think you'll have actually some people come and visit us here?
We already have one scheduled for next week. So, and we'll have some more that follow up with that.
So do you have data on that? I mean, it just kind of, did people throw their cards in a basket when they go by and things like that, and you follow up with them, you know?
We actually collect their cards when we have a conversation one-on-one with them, and then we have, we're still entering those in an executive pulse, and then we'll follow up with them based on what they requested
Are they
from us.
picking up materials from you, or?
They are. We have materials from the retail coach about a market, and then we also have internal materials that we have prepared to distribute to them. But primarily, we're going to follow up with them and the ones that have interest to come and visit Bastrop and take the road show. The most requested information is the available sites, and we'll have the bulk of those in the next couple of weeks, and then there'll be some odds and end tracks that are in or near the city limits of the city of Bastrop that have available utilities that we'll probably add to that list once.
Do you hand out written materials or written brochures from BEDC?
All of the above. We do digital on flash drives, we do hard copy, we do website, we do all of the above.
All right.
Whatever your preferred delivery method is, we have that available.
Okay, well, I know there's a lot of sophistication in it now, and a lot of people just like to get it, you know, about throw in the trash when they, you know, get around the corner, but, you know, still.
When, on our next meeting, if you have available samples of marketing, I know you've just revamped everything, so it'd be nice to see that and bring something we can peruse.
Okay.
Can you back up one slide back on the, where you were at the 130? There you go. Was that line, did you have that line further up toward that red X, or?
This is
Yeah.
where it currently is today.
Our market area?
That is the western edge of our trade area.
And
That's 130.
that's 130. And the brown X's are what?
The top brown X here is the Inland Coors Surf Park, developed by the Coors family. The brown X to the bottom is the Circuit of the Americas, developed by Red McCombs and his group. The red X there is a proposed 390-acre retail development.
On the west, on the Austin side?
Seems to me that you need to get busy annexing.
Well, I think that would be an interesting, I think that would be a very interesting thing for this board to take up.
Well, I'm
And
telling
to
you,
press with the council and press exactly where we need to be annexing. Let me say that just because we have, I mean, Mike's got about 4 or 5 really major things on his desk right now. But just because of that does not mean that we shouldn't be doing 4 or 5 more. And if annexation seems to this board to be a critical issue, and we want to talk about where the annexation needs to take place from an economic development standpoint, we need to have that on the agenda. We need to make a statement. We need to get the word to the council about what we want. It's very important. And Steve, and I appreciate you bringing it up. But the way the council's working right now, I would say that kind of jump start could be very, very valuable. Now, you just jump started me, but I'm just one person.
Well,
And getting Mike involved is going to be real important.
Did you have an area specifically in mind where you're talking?
Well, specifically, I've been hearing about this new line here for a while, and all I know is that it's going to happen. I-30 corridor is going to produce a lot of retail, it's going to produce housing, it's going to produce everything to the west, and we need to be, you know, feathering our nest here, because that's going to be some pretty high-end stuff, I think. It's going to be pretty nice stuff, no doubt, you know, but it's, you know, I'm not going to drive over there to go shopping. you know, but what I am gonna do is, I'm gonna try to shop locally as much as I can, but we need more sophisticated stores, and the more that you know, you start filling in the gap between us and Austin, you're gonna start getting that. I mean, obviously, you know, that I-30 corridor, you're getting a lot of stuff. I never get off when I'm 80 miles an hour, I ain't getting off I-30, you know, I'm just not gonna do it. And so it opens it up. I mean, it's obviously convenient for a lot of people, you know, to come down the corridor if there's something special going on at 71 to come down from Pflugerville and go. I don't expect it. I think it's gonna be clustering around whatever's going on with, I mean, and he hit it, you know, you got multi-use projects that are having retail, housing of all kinds, and everything else. And your restriction here is utilities.
There's going to be a ton of people living around that line, and that's going to drive some of what you're talking about. But I also understand about what the way people go. I also think people are more likely to drive into Center City than out to the suburbs. I mean, that's a rule of almost without mentioning. Two things that, did you finish with your?
Well, I'm just saying, you're gonna cover 71 up with great developments if you get the utilities out there, and you need the utilities, and that just goes hand in hand with annexation.
Well, and you heard Mike say at the last meeting that one of the 4 or 5 giant things on his table, on his desk, is what are we gonna do about wastewater? And when we gonna do that $10 million plan? And if we don't, what's gonna happen there? And what do we do about the 71 and 21 intersection? And so is that your line, Sean?
No.
How far back is that line?
Back toward-
You know, the best.
Oh, it's past, that line is where? That's where it is.
Okay, so, you know, getting at least to that point, real quick, and figuring out how to do it with utilities and stuff is possibly, I mean, we need it, number one, coming from this board. Number two, maybe this board can help somewhat with some of the needs out there. So I think it's a fabulous conversation, and I think the annexation is one of the keys, but the other one you just named is the infrastructure. And so that's the sort of thing I wouldn't expect the city council to figure out on its own necessarily. But I would expect this group to do it and to pressure, or not pressure, but to influence the city council, or to advise the city council.
So the only utility you brought up is sewer.
Well, I'm just saying
That's
that,
the only
I'm saying that
utility
we've got
that's under the
to,
control
we
of the
don't,
city.
Because the water belongs to Aqua. and
water
Blue Line
belongs to
has
Aqua,
utilities,
electricity
Blue Line has
belongs to,
electricity.
but you got to have sewer to put in a Target store, okay? So that's the one thing we're concerned about on the city council at this point. So, I mean, I got something to say once you're done, but I just want to encourage this board. In fact, hopefully we'll get it on the next agenda. We need to talk about this in detail and to be influencing the council or advising.
So can I finish my question with that red line? So you're saying maybe that where we are today with that trade area, you said 180,000, so I'm gonna say the Garfield area, the Ross Road, before you get to Onion Creek. I know a lot of people that live in that subdivision, they say they come to Bastrop to shop because it's only like 15 or 20 minutes. They don't have to cross into Austin lights and all that, they just come down the highway, go to H-E-B, Walmart, you know, wherever they go, Home Depot or whatever. So realistically, if that line moves like that, you think we're gonna lose even to Garfield?
Probably, yeah.
Where's the closest HEB?
Without a doubt.
Huh?
Where's the closest
They-
HEB? And is it on
Depends
my
where they put
way?
it.
Is it on my way to work? I mean, that's what he's drawing out there.
Everything that we have plus some will be located where that red X is at. If you can imagine every retailer that we have plus some will go locate at that location. And some that we won't will go locate there if we don't get out in front of it. And they won't come here once they locate there because they have circumferences that they will not build second stores within. And there's a whole, we've not quite reached that population class to be able to compete for them, so we've got to get there relatively quickly and go convince them that Bastrop's the place to be, because we are the retail hub in the southeast submarket today. We talk a lot about sales tax and volatility and the economics of it. This is actually the real volatility for sales tax for us is a retail a division of our retail submarket in which we're now sharing shoppers with another submarket. Because this submarket here is going to go beyond 130 to the west and pick up the denser population there in deep East Austin, I guess is the way you would describe it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that is the primary market. I think it's from there west,
Yeah.
not there east. And so I think we have a perfect opportunity here to, pretty much take up all the space, with an annexation, and maybe it is, your plan is.
So,
to Garfield.
so if somebody like an HEB parks itself at 21 and 71, you think some other tenants will surround them? I mean, some other box stores or,
Absolutely.
well, I mean, that's been rumored for years. And and we ought to jump on it. City ought to jump on it, and county ought to jump on it.
I think you're right.
I think it'd be a great partnership.
I think if they're going to locate a new store today, they're going to be closer to 71 and 130. Would be my guess on the Travis County side of the line, would be my guess
I
today.
might go further out, yeah.
I don't think they will not build a second store today at 21 and 71. They're going to be on the Travis County side of the 71, 130 line. And there's a couple of available tracks down there
I
that,
disagree with that. I wouldn't sell that too short because you go to this HEB much?
oh yeah,
Okay.
it's busy.
It's extremely busy. And so I don't think I'd count that out. I don't think it's a done deal, but just because we're gonna see some retail. And by the way, it takes a long time to put this thing together. All these big retail deals and, the multi-use kinds of deals. You're probably 5 years before, you really get much going on out there. The planning and everything else and the entitlements and everything you gotta get going there.
Us and the retail coach believe they're probably 3 to 5 years, but they are currently shopping at 2 anchor tenants.
I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt it at all.
My question, comprehensive plan will make recommendations for annexation, but that's probably a year out. So,
Well, even if
That
they
may
do,
be a
it
little
doesn't
too
mean this
long.
group's gonna have the same recommendation.
well,
I mean, do you see something
what I'm
conflicting?
thinking is why not get ahead of this also, but we need help from staff on that, on recommendations that we can take to them and to the council prior to that, where we're steering them instead of them steering us.
We have certain windows of time when we can annex, certain amounts we can annex. And there's no reason for us to not fully, we just decided not to go annex Excess Ranch for 10 years. So we've got lots of ground, left that we can work on. And we have a certain percentage we can do and all that. And I don't understand why we're not, let me start again. It would seem to me to be prudent for us to annex all we can if it's the right kind of annexation, whenever we have the window to do it in terms of the percentages of what we can do. So, and I think the advice from this group is more important than anything that we're hearing. Comprehensive plan, of course.
Well,
but
to me, that's slow.
It's, well, and and it may be that what we say, maybe what we say here ought to feed into the comprehensive plan.
Well, that's
And
what-
that you could take that to that board if we have the conversation. But I think it's real important to talk about it.
Well, obviously, and this is a Sean question, obviously going along 71 is sort of a no-brainer, and I guess it's where we go from there.
The trick with annexation is that then you have a very finite window wherein the city has to make every single service that it provides, fire, police, library, wastewater, every municipal service that it provides available within 3 years, or they're subject to de-annexation. And so it does require some timing, and the council looks at that, and it's a great plan, and I think they are working on that. But that's the give and take of the deal, is that once you get it, then you have a very significant financial obligation to serve it.
Are any of these housing developments large enough to work in some of those services? Like sometimes they put in schools or fire station, that kind of thing, or are they little bitty things?
You look at Pecan Park, that's going to be 700-800 units. West Bastrop Village MUD, which is a MUD, is going to be about 1,200 units plus or minus. There is, one of the X's is going to be about 2,000 units plus or minus, give or take. They're still in some preliminary design phase. Excess Ranch, 10, 12,000 units up there, which is going to be a PID mud combination. It varies from each one and what it's going to do. West Bastrop Village, one of the great things that's going to happen is we're going to provide wholesale wastewater to them, hopefully. Wastewater, which will extend that line across 20 there and service that development. And there's some benefits to the city by being able to do that. And so it extends that line up there and opens up some additional property that may be developable from that. I'll have to go and look at the map and go, what makes sense? And you've got to pull the utility maps for wastewater, the CCNs for, most of it's going to be Blue Bonnet's territory to an electric and aqua for water, but we've got to make sure that's the case in what we're dealing with.
Then you've got other
City of Bastrop
Forest.
sewer. And so is Bastrop Village going to become a wholesale customer?
Yes,
That is correct. That's correct. That's the plan.
that's what we're trying to put
That's
together.
under negotiation is the best way to put it.
Mhm.
It has not been to council for approval yet.
It's a lot of our plan, whether it's wholesale or retail.
Yeah, it is.
And we need somebody to partner on the first leg of that plan to reduce the debt that the city would incur.
So, in terms of the west side stuff, I may not understand the difference between commercial and retail, but there was a whole lot of your conversation. There was nothing about industrial in that. What's the difference between commercial and retail?
So, commercial is basically everything that's related to a business, and that includes industrial and office space. It's the global definition. From our standpoint on the industrial side of what we do in the industrial park, I would not recommend to this board to go west of the Colorado and look to buy a tract of land. That is prime development land that there are private developers in this market or willing to come to this market that are willing to be in that market and do it for a profit. And we can go and partner with them to help them overcome their hurdles and be successful if they're looking to build an office campus, if they're looking to develop an industrial park, whatever it may be. We don't necessarily on the west side of Bastrop have to be in the land business in which we're doing land grants as our primary incentive, where we can use some other incentive, performance-based incentive to encourage that. Yes, sir.
I didn't take it that you were suggesting we go buy land for.
Well, I was going there.
Don't worry about it.
So my question then becomes, and maybe you've already heard me say that, so you've anticipated my question, but what's the point of having an industrial park?
So the industrial park that we have now,
What's the point of having an industrial park, period? 20 years ago, we decided we'd put all our eggs in the industrial park basket.
so
Okay.
there are some businesses that we need shovel-ready sites that private developers are not going to deliver. You look at Good Soul Brewing, they could go in a lot of locations, but that's just a good location for them in which we're able to offer them a shovel-ready site within the industrial park. Is there another location in Bastrop that could have provided the same ease of access? Maybe. But from our standpoint, the economic incentive of being able to grant discounted land makes logical sense.
Why wouldn't it make sense on the other side of the river?
Because on the other side of the river, private developers will come and fill that need.
So we picked a bad spot that nobody wanted, or nobody would want 20 years from now, when we decided to buy that land.
I just think the businesses that are going to locate in the park better fit the park versus than they do West 71 development. When you look at the Foundry, when you look at what Coughlin is doing with his 50,000 square foot expansion, he's not going to go West 71 with what he does out there.
Isn't the opposite way of saying that? Because we have a piece of ground on the east side of the river, the only people that are going to go there are the people that fit that? I mean, I don't understand, your logic sounds just like it would work either way, Sean. I mean, if we were starting from scratch and we had not spent any money on that industrial park, and we had $30 million in the bank. Are you saying that it might make any sense to go buy some ground on the west side of the river?
No, it wouldn't.
You want to say more? If I'm the only one that, if y'all all understand what he's
No,
saying,
I'm
that's
I'm
fine.
with him. It's
Our-
gonna build out without.
Yeah, our role is.
So why do we need?
We just
the-
facilitate.
So
Yeah.
what's the reason for us maintaining our current industrial park?
We're filling a gap in the market that can't be filled by private developers.
And there's nothing on the west side of the river that would fill anybody's gap.
Well, yeah, there's a lot on the west side of the river in East Austin. That's where all the development is taking place. I mean, you got, Texas Parks and Wildlife, they have a huge building over
campus.
there. You got all kinds of factories and, all kinds of stuff going on over there in the less expensive land in East Austin. But it's incredible what they've got over there. I don't know if you've gone through those industrial parks they have over there, but it's amazing. And it's not just industry. I mean, it's not just, making, widgets and things like that. You've got huge businesses over there. Texas Parks and Wildlife is a very good example.
Data Foundry has a big hosting site over there. Data hosting a computer room.
Yeah.
Security on that, it's huge.
Yeah,
Quarter million square
that's the
foot.
kind, but the land is inexpensive, relatively speaking, for Austin. But it's not located out in where you're gonna be able to get a lot of sales taxes and retail development and housing and things like that that's convenient to, getting on the corridors to taking you to downtown Austin, or getting on the corridors to bring you to Bastrop once it starts growing, and you start having more businesses here and things like that. So it really is a matter of economies of scale on the land part of it, and what's the highest and best use of the land. In East Austin, one of the highest and best use of that land is exactly what I just said. It's great industrial, it's great office space. You got this flex space where you got office and, factory and or other uses and buildings, but it's all commercial. Retail is commercial, by the way.
So
So
you
anything
don't-
that's a business as opposed to housing, or industrial is commercial.
Because when we were talking about who's doing what's what in this business, it was a whole bunch of stuff about industrial jobs. And then what we're really talking about here is commercial. And I think I heard over and over again that what we were supposed to be doing, the primary jobs had something to do with industrial, but not commercial. So maybe I misunderstood.
Steve, when you're talking about East Austin, you talking about all the way up to I-30? I mean, total.
Well,
You passed
you actually can see a lot of that up and down 130 right now.
Yeah.
You sure can. But no, I wasn't talking about 130. I was really talking about, I was trying to make an example for mayor that really, these kinds of developments really do go for cheap land. And the fact that it's sitting in East Austin does not have any impact on it at all. I mean, it's great for what they do, and it's not just for industrial. Typically, what you would think is something you're making widgets or whatnot. I mean, you got one of Texas' largest departments right there, state government.
And I don't think starting the industrial park 20 years ago was a mistake. It was the only thing going. There wasn't any move to develop in this direction, but now we have a lot of motion in this direction, so that lessens the importance of the industrial park.
Well, that's my point. So the next question is, if what do you do with it? If you're saying that we don't want to reinvest any of that west of
Not
the river.
saying reinvest, but let's just table that for now while we focus on some of these other things.
What-
And the infrastructure needs, there's all sorts of exciting things. It's just, give us a little time and see what develops.
Well, we're going to look in the executive session at a project in the park that is going to go no place but in the park. That's its best fit. And when we have a project come in the door, whether we generate the lead that comes from OA or DDT or any other of our other sources for leads, we look at the project and go, what's its best fit? Is it the industrial park? It might be. It might be on 71. It might be off of 95. We try to fit them with what makes sense for that business and not try to pigeonhole ourselves that we only have one thing to offer in the park. We have a whole community that we can offer and other sites that are adjacent to the community that make logical sense.
What is the, do you know what the breakdown is for that 180,000? I mean, I just find it hard to believe there's 180,000 people coming to shop in Bastrop, but I keep hearing that. So my question is, what percentage of that is east of Home Depot, and how much of it's west of Home Depot?
Well, it basically, did we bring the map?
Well,
I've got the retail report.
south and north too, I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, or draw me a circle and do it in pies, make us a pie. I'm trying to see about the impact of what you're talking about.
It's also shown, you can download it from the website.
oh, yeah,
Right
that's
here.
probably good.
You want to see this?
Yeah, but I can't plug into it.
No, but you can plug it in.
And how
Here, why don't you
is
email that
that
to me?
information generated? Is it people driving by and stopping because they're going from Houston to Austin?
Can you send that to me real quick?
Or I could just send you the flash drive.
Well, every time I
I'm
go
using my
into
jack.
a box store, they ask what my zip code is.
Yeah.
That's,
So what are the zip codes that make up the 180,000?
there's a couple different ways to get the data.
Didn't we get that from the retail code?
We get it from the retail code.
They put people out in the parking lots and did license plates and
Yeah, we try not to say
talked
that
to
out
people
public.
and whatever.
That's Big Brother.
Oh.
So Visa is offering a new product currently, which is probably actually one of the coolest new products for retail. They actually aggregate, basically you can give them a 2-block area and they can aggregate all of the shoppers and what they're spending in that and where they're coming from, which will generate the same result. The retail coach does a license plate study. You go through a parking lot and you use a license plate scanner, you scan the license plate, and you can take it back to the registration site. And so you know where that shopper came from the license plate study. You go into Academy and they ask you for your zip code every time that you're in the store. Somebody like H-E-B or Walmart, you actually have a customer file with them, so every time you write them a check or swipe your debit card, they know who you are and associate that back to your customer account, and so they know where you live. The big data that's out there on you and on everybody that shops in Bastrop is pretty readily available.
Do they have a way of telling whether you only came once or you came 50 times?
When you do the license plate study, you typically do it on an average basis. You do it on a weekend and you do it during the week a couple of times. With the big data that the H-E-Bs and Walmarts collect, yes, they do know how frequently you're in the store. They actually know what you're buying with that. Visa, with their big data, will actually know how frequently you're shopping within a certain region. What Visa is actually doing is they're actually developing basically a credit score for different blocks, and so retailers can actually look at it and be able to compare block to block to where they're looking to locate. This is a 640 versus an 820 for the product and service that you're looking at. It's actually a pretty neat product. And
What was your question, Mayor?
I'm trying to figure out if I bought some gasoline in Cypress, Texas today, am I going to be considered part of the Cypress?
I saw that pop up on the website.
Yeah,
in fact.
am I going to be considered, how do I know it's not just somebody stopping by and buying, they lost their underwear on their way to Austin to the football game, they stopped by Walmart and bought something? When 180,000 people.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that. My question is, if they're stopping only once, it's not going to do us a lot of good unless you tweak that somehow. I mean, what I consider a trade area is people that come to trade here. And when I say to people, we have 180,000 people coming to shop here, I would like to be able to answer something other than for them to say I'm
And
crazy.
it doesn't matter whether they come one time or come 10 times. If you get 10 people from one neighborhood coming one time each, that's 10 visits from 7, 8, whatever it was. If you get one guy coming 10 times, it has the same effect.
Sure, but how do you know what it is and how you
Doesn't matter.
measure?
Do you care? as long as
Yes,
they're buying.
are they measuring that, would be my question.
Well,
Are they assuming?
They're
if I-
taking a statistical study, you know.
I mean, is there a science behind this, and how does it work?
Oh, yeah, there's a sign.
So if I stop in Walmart and I live in, let's say Schulenburg, do they have some system to say, what, you know, some prediction that 9 other people are gonna follow me next month and stop in there, or I'm gonna come 10 times through Bastrop and stop at Walmart because I live in Schulenburg? I mean, how does that, to me, 180,000 folks has to be, described some way other than we got 100.
It's
It's
geographic, but how they get the geographics is, you know, the zip codes and their license plates. And there's probably other ways they get it too. I don't know what all they use.
And basically, you have a primary trade area of those people that live here right around Bastrop that are here every single day, every single week shopping here. And then as you get out, you have a secondary trade area of those people that might just come on Saturday or Sunday or come every other week. And so the retailers themselves, when they look at our data that we supply them, they know what their customer profile is. And so they take our data, insert their customer profile, and they may go, I only pull from 5 miles around my store, and here's the data that's relevant to my store. Another store like a Walmart or an H-E-B may go, we pull from 30 miles or 40 miles away from our store, and they're coming once a week to our store. And so they can aggregate that. From this kind of research, they can aggregate from their own store data what their performance is going to be and be able to do a pro forma on their store footprint.
So could we compare, whatever these apples are, could we compare those apples with, say, LaGrange
It's gotta be pretty
and
sparse.
Gilligan and Gonzales, and see how, see what the comparative numbers are? Do they have numbers for those kind of cities as well?
If they're a contract community, yes. If they're not a contract community,
They don't have that.
they don't have that.
Would that information be available to us
Disperse.
if they're part of the same thing?
They got locked in or
We would just have to go, it's public information, just like.
See, that would help explain it better, if we could say, yeah, we're 4 times bigger than LaGrange, or 3.5 times bigger than Gonzales, or something. It would sort of kind of start making sense.
And you look at some of the communities that are on this map that are within our trade area, we know as economic developers, and the retail coach knows, they're moving in the wrong direction population-wise. And they're actually having negative population growth because of their location and because of their industry. And we're attracting their shoppers because they've got store closings and those offerings are no longer available in their communities. There's a couple of them that we know in particular that's the case, that they're having store closings and you're going to have to come to Bastrop for certain goods and services that you previously didn't. It's an interesting science. And you look at where we go all the way down to 10, we're going up to Lexington, we pick up Giddings. What we believe is going to happen here at that 130 is it's going to pull back somewhere down in that.
And so back to my question about east, south, north, and west. I mean, if 70% of that 180,000 is west of your little Cedar Creek line, it makes a world of difference. And do we have that now?
We would have to go to those individual communities that subscribe to some kind of service and do an analysis of it.
No, I'm saying, if we know there's 180,000 folks coming to Bastrop to shop, that are trades area, do we know where they come from in proportion?
Are you talking about by zip code?
Well, however you do, I don't care how they measure it.
Yes.
My question is, if they're measuring it accurately, can we get a geographic distribution on what the numbers are? Because it just shows us the dynamics of it.
He wants to see a gradation.
So
and
are you, when we
concentration.
look at the map with the license plate study, this whole sector right here is blue. And then there's outliers beyond there where you start seeing the map behind it. And that's how it's pretty much determined.
What does blue mean?
There's somebody, for every license plate, there's a dot put on the map. And this area right here is pretty much blue, solid, and that's how the trade area is determined. And then you have outliers beyond that you start picking. We had one from Amarillo. We know that person was here on vacation. We wish it went all the way that far, but we know that that's not the case. And so we have maps that show the state, the region, and then all the way down to this.
Let me put it another way. If I were Walmart and I wanted to sell T-shirts for football teams,
Mhm.
like the Smithville Tigers and the Elgin Leopards, would Walmart be able to tell how many Cedar Creek Eagle shirts they should buy versus LaGrange Lions? I mean, you understand my question?
Yes,
So
so,
you get 2 for LaGrange and 150 for Cedar.
That's my question. And then-
Who's got the Walmart store?
Is there a way, is there
If
a
LaGrange
way?
has their own Walmart, they wouldn't be selling any down here. Giddings has their own Walmart, they wouldn't be selling.
so Walmart actually,
I was trying to use an example, Willie. I'm
But
not trying to tell which.
I think you're getting it, I know what you're trying to get at, but you gotta start by knowing 60 or 70% of your sales tax comes from outside our city limits. So then you can start going by, whether you're talking about Cedar Creek zip code, Elgin zip code, Smithville zip code, Red Rock zip code, Bastrop zip code, in that area.
Yeah, and if 90% of it is zip codes to the west, that's a world of difference, and 90% of it is zip codes to the east, starting with Sean's graphic cards. That's my point.
Well, the Cedar Creek zip code's gonna pick up at 1209 all the way to the county line. So that's a big area.
Okay?
And then going south on 21.
I'll talk any language, I'll talk street addresses, I'll talk zip codes. I'm trying to find out if we have an idea, if this people we subscribe to can give us some idea. How did you describe it a minute ago?
You
Not-
want to have a gradation and a concentration.
we can acquire it, but not for a price that we're willing to pay. That data that you're asking for to the street level is extremely expensive.
I didn't say street level, but, I mean, you could
He
divide
wants to
that
know-
thing into a quadrant. I'd love to know what the quadrant is, you know?
Yeah, like you can assume that Bastrop's just one hundred
My Wi-Fi
percent.
won't stay.
Okay, I'll just
And
pull
by
it
the
up.
time you're at the fringe, say.
But if we
they're
can't afford it and we
20%.
can't get it, then that's fine. I wanted to find out if we had access to that data. And if we don't, then we don't. Now, what we've got is a big blob
I
of
would
pictures.
think that the detail of it is probably behind some of these numbers, don't you think?
Well, if they pull on the zip code level, you have to remember, even Bastrop zip code goes way out. I mean, you've got the city of Bastrop, and you've got all the way up to Cedar Creek, and then you've got north to Elgin. And he's right, or what Sean said,
A
you
lot of
almost
that
have to pull down to
78621
the
out there,
census
isn't it?
level.
That's Elgin. 1,
Right,
2
that's
is
the
Cedar Creek,
621.
so, I mean, but,
Or
you know, there's
612.
you go out to 1209 on 71, get to different zip codes. Go toward Elgin, you get about halfway, you get to another zip code. Go to Smithville, you go past Allen Creek, you're in another zip code, so
And
it's,
the thing about it is what we measure today is not what it's gonna be like 10 years from now. Because the growth along the 71 corridor between here and 130 is where, especially if they put in this center at 130 and 71, the development just east of that intersection is gonna go nuts.
Yeah, well, that's a corollary question. That's an important question. I think that's what Sean was getting at. And so what's going on today and what's going on for the future is pretty important. I agree with you.
So this is basically the state level view of the license plate analysis that was done within the last month.
For Bastrop?
Yes.
And what is each
Can
of
you
those
give us a little more detail?
crosses
Yeah,
represent?
it's a license plate.
Is a license.
Yeah, it's more than a license plate.
And then as you zoom in, it's more than a license plate, it's kind of, yeah. So this is the regional view whenever you zoom in to the region here. Kind of gives you an idea where we're at.
And so that represents each little X or whatever that is, plus represents a license plate.
Mhm.
Okay, so the clustering is the
Look
key
how
to.
we never pass I-35. Interesting.
And this is kind of the city view within the city limits.
So can you like go west?
This is the most global view for the region that we
I
have.
mean, could you go to that detail in the city, but move it over 5 miles?
I'm sure we could.
Oh, we just happen to have that slide for Bastrop.
Yeah, that's,
I'm sorry, I thought you were moving it around.
No.
It's not interactive.
no, this is not interactive.
I get it,
But this is kind of a regional view in which it shows, the green line right there is the toll road in 130, and then you see how.
So basically, we just go to all the county lines. If you draw a circle around those blue crosses, we all touch all the existing counties around us.
But which looks pretty much the same as that yellow thing.
That's how the yellow thing is drawn.
Oh, from that?
You were asking for the pinpoint data of how we draw it. This is, they kind of take the cluster and remove the outliers.
Yeah, it'd be cool to, if there is a way to interact that or to do some blow-ups, it'd be an interesting thing to look at. If we could see the detail that we have for Bastrop in different quadrants of that blob, that'd be very helpful.
I think the big issue is what percentage of our market area is Cedar Creek, because that's gonna be the impact. Right now, my guess is that a lot of what comes here is Cedar Creek. And when you've got the opportunity to go a little bit further to 130 and get a lot more potentially, or because they're going to work that direction, to stop on the way to work or the way from work and do your shopping there, we're gonna lose.
The latter's more important,
We're
because
gonna
they're driving
lose
by
that
their
market.
You know, well, it depends on the road condition. Like right now, you don't even want to go toward Austin. We're easier.
But if you already go to Austin.
If you're going to work at the state capitol,
Right, if
and
you're
you drive by
already
the
driving
Target
by
at
there.
1:30, you're not gonna come to Bastrop to the Walmart.
But that's been the case all along.
But it's
I
not,
guess-
there's nothing there to shop at right now.
It's
You
harder
can-
to get, well, yeah,
It depends on where you work in Austin, but if you work
do you stop there?
downtown, there's really not any real serious shopping between downtown.
Or
and
do
Bastrop.
you stop at the HEB? You live in
Well,
Cedar
I-
Creek, you stop at the HEB on Riverside on your way home, which I'm sure a lot of that goes on. And that may be the thing that Willie pointed out too. We don't see much, well, no, it's not
I
right.
guess what I'm
Wrong
saying
story.
right now is it depends on the road conditions, because if there was an HEB right now at 130, or the HEB here, 90% of the people are gonna come here, because getting to 130 is so difficult. That'll
Unless you're
change.
driving there to go to work.
Oh, and you live in Cedar Creek or Red Rock.
Or you live
And
in Cedar Creek.
it takes you 20 minutes to get to
No,
Bastrop.
the traffic is so congested, it's so hard. You're not, on Saturday afternoon, you're gonna make a choice, and it won't be to go that direction.
You take somebody that lives off 21 in Cedar Creek on 812 and lives toward the county line. I'll guarantee you, I don't know what the percentage is, but most of those people are coming this way to shop in Bastrop, because there's nothing that you cross Ben White up all in that area. They're gonna come to Walmart, HEB, or whatever down here in Bastrop.
What if there was a Target at the raceway?
I don't
Think they wouldn't go over there?
The traffic is so tough over there now, it just gets worse.
Well, it's important questions, it's very important
It
questions.
won't always be that way.
But
That
it
road
won't be
construction's
that
gonna be
way.
finished.
Right, that road construction's gonna change everything, but how you get on and off those overpasses is gonna make a big difference.
What's changed is that road from the racetrack to 71 is opened up now. So even from that area over there, people still gonna come to Bastrop, because that Kellum Road is opened up to 71, and they come down another 15 minutes down
It's already
71.
But even
Yeah.
Depends
even
on where
with
the
the new
Target is.
highway, the new overpasses and toll road stuff, once the development hits, the traffic count goes up by 100%. It's still, you're right, people will be inclined to go to Bastrop if they're gonna go grocery shopping, and they're not, if you're not going to Austin for some other reason, and it's equidistant to get here or to go to Austin, most people, unless you got something else specifically that you want, that we don't have.
You keep bringing up the Target. Is that something you've heard around 130?
I could talk about Coles. I'm trying to use an example, Willie. I'm not doing a very good
No,
job
I
with it,
think,
you know, but I'm
no,
trying
no,
to find something
but I
that
think,
people might.
I'd say
might
something
find.
different. I'd counter with it, if there was an HEB,
Well, I'll tell you, HEB, Walmart, Sonic, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know,
you're right,
it's,
either one of those two.
but I think I think what your point is, your line is gonna move east, Sean. I mean, I think what we're talking about is, your line's gonna move somewhere east.
And we don't know exactly where that line's gonna be.
I think it's Pope Bend Road myself.
But it's gonna move
I would
somewhere.
go I would,
It's a pretty good spot.
And the retailers that we're hearing at 71 and 130 that they're trying to attract, those Cedar Creek, or the Cedar Creek shoppers and our high affluent net worth folks, they're probably gonna wanna go there, the guys that they're trying to attract. because they're trying to attract those mid-tier and higher retailers to go along with what we already have. And that's when we're gonna lose them, is when you can go to J.C. Penney's at 71 and 130.
Well, can we get back to kind of what we started this conversation with? How would you like for us to pursue some talks about?
We've talked about everything I wanted to. I've got a couple of things written down for the future, but I think we talked about the west side, and that's what I wanted. Good conversation.
Well, and when we get to comprehensive plan, what I'd like to see is that we can make some recommendations for future
When will
annexations.
you have that, by the way?
Well, we meet regularly, and the next meeting is Friday, so, I guess the question would be, and it's a staff question too, is if we have to make recommendations, we have to discuss it, and then we have to make.
Do you know where there is on your timeline for annexation? One of them?
They're on chapter 1 right now. Last meeting was on chapter 1, which was about nothing.
How many chapters are there?
I think there's, how many, 10, 11, something?
Yeah, 12.
12?
No, there's not 10, there's 9 or 10.
I think it was 9.
9,
It was
yeah.
So do you think annexation is one of those, or part of one of those?
I think it'll be part of it, because it was a discussion item. It was poorly presented by them, but it's a discussion item.
Is it possible that annexation could be moved up? Do they have to go in a certain order?
Mayor, let me throw in something, and I'm not saying you're wrong with talking about annexation. I don't think you need to wait for anybody or some recommendation to come from a committee for the city to decide whether they're going to
Willie?
go on it. Let me finish. If we think it's a smart deal, and y'all started that 3 or 4 years ago, going down the highway and annexing, the city needs to get started right now and worrying about how it's going to pay for, what the costs are going to be involved in annexing, and how we're going to pay for it. We don't need to wait for some committee to say, I think we need their blessing from a committee to go and say, well, we need to annex down the road. We probably know we need to do that. What we need to be working on is what the costs are going to be and how we're going to pay for it.
What I'm saying is, we're sitting here in a board meeting where our chairman brought up something about annexation. Where one of our members, our representative on the strategic planning committee is talking to us about annexation. I think that if I'm a city council member, I'd be interested in what two of the most key groups we've got in the community have to say about it. Plus, if I'm a city council member, and I know it's on our list about annexation, it hadn't come up in a long time, and I might welcome a push. And all I'm saying is, you can go off and do whatever you want to as a city council member, but I'm sitting here as a member of this board tonight, and I'm saying, I think Steve brought up a really important subject. I'm planning to ask for a conversation at the next meeting about it, because I think this board needs to talk about it from this board's perspective, just like I expect the comprehensive plan to do it, and just like I expect the city council to do it, and the planning and zoning or whoever else has 2 cents worth. We're all in this together, and it's going to take all of us to make this thing work. And that's my perspective. So, I mean, obviously, you can put anything you want to on the agenda. I'll put anything you ask for on the agenda. We can talk about anything you want to. I'm saying, as a board member here, I think it's a really important subject, and I think the perspective of this board is real important to the city council and to the community.
Well, I think, I agree with you, but I'm going to say we should have started this real conversation 3 years ago and said what realistically do we want to be in what year and what we want to be?
I think-
But what those costs are going to take for those utilities to get out that way and how we're going to pay for them. Those are the 2 most important things.
I hope
You can get all the recommendations from the committee you want, but they can't tell you how you're going to pay for them.
I think that's part of the process. As I said, we're all in it together, Willie, and I think you're absolutely right. That has to happen.
On all these boards for the last 3 years, so I think you can't point a lot of fingers.
I'm only one person. We're sitting over here all these years worried about a damn street over here with chickens. And it took 2 years for them to finally get a chicken sanctuary district set up. And that was the most important thing they were worried about. I mean, do you want me to keep on?
No, it took about a month to get it
I
done.
love
No,
it.
y'all started that way before I came back on the council, and it was a year before we finished what we're doing over there. There's a lot of things that we've done, but y'all took important steps in annexing down the highway, which was good. But we shouldn't stop because we knew we were gonna go past, maybe the colony even past that. But we should have had something.
Trying to say the same.
The only thing we
trying
knew
to
that
say
we were
the
gonna
same
serve
thing.
was sewer, and we need to figure out what the costs were gonna be and how we're gonna pay for it. Are they gonna do it with muds, or what are they gonna do with it?
But Well, you heard Mike's. I've said it 4 times. You've got it.
Before we get off this topic, is there any objection to our roller strategy in the retail development? And what we as staff are doing in.
Well, does it fit all the stuff we were talking about, the questions we were asking? Is that all part of the mix?
The question I have, I guess, is how this plays in with some of the target markets that we had that were not retail.
Yeah,
When you identified the different markets,
so you gotta kind of set.
you've got a little niche here, and that's good, go Tiger. Are we also
You-
working that angle?
Yes, you
Okay.
kind of got to segregate this as this is its own little world because it has its own little intricacies, and this is how we plan on approaching addressing the retail and retail development and mixed use and smart growth development in Bastrop from our standpoint as staff. Unless there's any objection, this is what kind of the general direction we're going to go. Okay.
Okay, now, is this presentation in here so we can kind of dwell on this a little bit? What you're talking about doing here?
No, we can send it to you.
Would you?
Send that summary.
Will do.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, updates, you ready for that?
Yeah, and my update's in there. We've tried to do a better job. I think we've gotten out most weeks an update to the board members. Hopefully y'all are reading them. They do actually change. I do want to thank Angela for some of the work that she's doing for us.
Not all of it is selling, no, I'm just kidding.
She has been corralling myself and a couple of contractors of ours, and as we've been revamping some of our marketing materials, and we're very appreciative of her efforts there. Jean did start today full-time, and she left this afternoon for Dallas on an EDC.
You just had too much?
She's on vacation.
Pull
She's
down
taking
one
her
day,
first
she
vacation
leaves.
already.
After being on the road for 2 weeks, I was supposed to be in Dallas tomorrow for a site consultant event, and I came back in the office on Friday. I went, would one of y'all please go to Dallas on Tuesday for me? And Jean was like, I'll go. I'm starting full-time Monday. And I went, hallelujah. So I am in the office tomorrow. I am a little road weary at the moment. So Jean is on full-time. The report on ICSC is in there. The report on FabTech is in there. Future meeting items, as we're working through the list, if y'all have any new ones today, we'll add them. What we're doing in education, workforce development, BR&E, and marketing and recruiting, y'all can all read that. I do believe I'm actually done traveling for the year. I think my next trip is in January of next year. And then we'll give project updates in executive session. Nancy's report for the Main Street program is in there. We pulled out any of the important excerpts from the city manager's report from 11:10 to the council for the BEDC board. The construction report update is in there. That's it. Well, the only other one that we have that we can get verbally is the comprehensive plan and where they're at. Trying to hurry.
Okay, comprehensive plan, let me talk about that for just a moment. And this is more about consultants than anything. They did a presentation for us that was absolutely horrible. And it was interesting because the audience kind of went into mutiny after a certain point. It was obviously a boilerplate, and they were just plugging in some census
That's the
numbers.
consultant?
Yeah, with no tie-in, and it was chapter 1 and probably canned verbiage. And so the audience pushed back and pointed out they were working for Bastrop and not Austin. And some basic things like that. And to show how cliche this was, which is the reason I'm bringing this up, how ironic, is they handed out a map of Bastrop to everybody at the very end and said, here's some colored markers. You can just mark everything you want to annex with no parameters. So it's just like, make a pretty picture and keep everybody happy. Are y'all having fun yet? And, I think everybody just walked out at that point. You don't need to put all this down.
I do have to talk to somebody about it.
But it is a lesson on I think in the process of challenging them, hopefully they'll tighten up their efforts a little bit here, and we'll have a better product in the end. Right now, we don't have. They're still beginning. It's at the beginning point. So
When's your next meeting?
this Friday at 8 o'clock. I think it's here.
And it's chapter 2, which is annexation, by the way, chapter.
Okay, is it
That's part of it.
O'clock at night.
in the morning? So-
Are y'all advertising for people, for citizens to come, or we already gotten all the citizen input we
I
want?
don't know that. I don't know how they're advertising it.
Growth, annexation, and infrastructure.
Oh, well, that might take one
Could be
meeting.
interesting.
Growth, infrastructure, and what?
Chapter 2, annexation, growth, and infrastructure.
That's one night of their topics?
You don't know, it's just, that's chapter 2.
We'll see how they do, and this is a personal note, also not for, but the guy presenting was a staff person, and he was starting to lose control of the meeting, and usually the principal will step in then to say something reassuring and kind of comfort and pull it back.
Principal
in,
being,
the owner of the firm, and he just kept sitting in the chair. So, it wasn't a great meeting. We'll see, we'll see.
all right.
Executive session?
Executive session.
I'm moved
Under
to
executive
adjourn.
session.
I have a question about whether we're gonna deal with item 7,
Second.
water.
We have a second?
Oh,
Second
uh,
Are you
question.
gonna finish the agenda before you adjourn?
the sign would be,
I was thinking about potential agendas.
Okay.
We're talking about,
I'd like to see us, can I,
yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to see us talk about annexation at some point.
annexation, absolutely.
I also think that, at some point, we gotta talk about the ultimate use of the industrial park. We put that off after voting to do that road.
Can I ask you a question, Mayor? I don't mean to butt in, but, after the discussion the other night while we were taking up the sign ordinance that was brought before the council, you know what I'm talking about?
What? It was brought before the council.
He knows what I'm talking about, Christie. Remember the discussion the other night from one of the members of the council? You barely
I
ever
remember it.
about if that was discussed at a BEDC meeting, but that was only privy to 3 members, and we were the 3 that it was privy to, and not anybody else on the council.
Yeah.
How do we get this discussion from the annexation to the council? Are they gonna ask,
Well-
are the rest of the members gonna ask, why are y'all taking it up, not the council?
I don't care.
Okay.
But, I have an answer to that council person.
Okay,
The
good.
minutes of these meetings are published.
If this board can't deal with something like that, and if this board can't talk, I think the question, Willie, here's my answer.
I'll tell you my answer.
Okay.
I think as Mike is an ex-official member of this board and the city manager, when we had that discussion, we asked him to bring it on his report.
Well-
And we discussed that in the meeting.
Let me tell you what happened.
Do what?
Since Willie brought it up, let me tell
What'd
you
you
what
say?
happened.
I said half the board is on the council, so how do we have poor communication?
Here's what
It's the other
happened.
half of the council that thinks they're not getting the information.
Now, listen, honestly, what Willie brought up, we were talking about something that we talked about in here. We didn't take any action. He just brought it up and said, EDC's aware of this. I think that a better way to communicate, I think I said this at the meeting, would be if this committee, this board has something to communicate to the council, we communicate to them, to the chair and through Sean, or through some action of ours.
Well,
Willie
Sean is
just
coming
mentioned-
once a
Well,
once a
yeah, but
month.
Willie just mentioned something we talked about. It wasn't official or anything like that. It allowed, here's my mind reading. There's some criticism of the mayor that he's allowed 2 other members of the council to be on this board. And I think there's some angst in the community about that and on the board, on the council. So I think that got raised, and I take it as criticism towards me. I think I know what I'm doing, but I understand. So I do think we're better off if we're going to raise something about, to answer your question, if we were to decide that it's very important for the city to do something that only the city council can do, we need to advise the city council as a board. City council, BEDC says, please go annex something. That's all we got to do, and I think that's the clean way to do it instead of us talking outside these meetings about it.
And, looking backwards, even on the sign issue, it's appropriate when we get to these issues that deal with ordinances, that we instruct Sean to bring it up at the next meeting. We discussed an issue that we have from an economic development standpoint with the current ordinance that we think probably needs to be adjusted. and
It's a,
But if we didn't, but we never said that. If we had said, if somebody had said, I move that we go tell the city council we think the sign ordinance is crap, then that would have been different. But we didn't do it. We just talked about it in general. So I don't want to put him in the spot and try to read our
no, but
minds.
what I'm saying is if we're in agreement on that issue,
Let's agree.
then we need to agree, and it needs to go, even though we can't do anything about the sign ordinance, we can, through Sean,
We
bring it as an
can
issue
we
to
can
the
advise,
council.
we can recommend, we can seek to influence. I think that's our responsibility.
Well, the first thing would be to get the actual facts on this, because there's been some misinformation there. And I remember even Mike Talbot was acting like he'd never heard about it before, and I know personally it's
Well, I think we knew what it was about, frankly,
It was a
but I
good
think
one.
both ends. But
Yeah.
the other thing, two other things are, I think sooner or later we're going to talk about the ultimate disposition or use of the industrial park. And I'd also like to talk about whatever Carlos's ideas were. Just because he's gone doesn't mean his ideas were wrong. I don't remember what they were.
Disposition.
Yeah, the only, the
What are we
item,
going to finally do? We're going to develop it, we're going to sell it, we're going to build a road.
yeah, the item from Carlos that was originally on the draft prior to him resigning from the board was the committee structure, and if that's something that the board wants to
I'd like to
revisit,
see it talk about
can we bring it back?
it. Whether we could do some,
You're talking about subcommittees.
some kind of subgrouping that,
Subcommittees of the board.
his idea was, I think, if I remember what he said, was something like, maybe there's some things what Gary said was we've done that in the past. And I think what Carlos was talking about, something a little more formal.
We've done it on a case-by-case basis, where we have an issue, we assign a group to
Marketing,
work on
yeah,
it.
like.
So, and maybe one or two board members goes off with somebody else and gets some good expertise.
I think what we've done, I mean, just to not spend a lot of time on it, what you've done in the past is fine, and Carlos had a specific agenda for a specific target that he wanted a specific committee for. And so I'm not, which is the education thing, so
Well,
I'm not sure.
I'm interested in the topic in general. It may be the only one, but I hope it's worth an agenda item.
Okay.
Uh,
All right,
Motion and second.
I move, I got a second.
Okay, I know we do have that, but one last thing. Do we
Excuse me.
want to talk about anything on a replacement at this point, or should we just kind
If the
of?
board, it's kind of awkward for me. Boy, it's really awkward with three of us sitting here that are, you're talking about a board replacement?
We can't really talk about that because it's not on the agenda.
it's not on the
Oh.
agenda. You can talk about whether or not you want to talk about it on a future agenda,
Yeah.
but you can't
Well,
talk
we
about
can
any
put that on the
specifics.
agenda for next time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, and
Would you?
that assumes that the council turns down whoever I nominate, but, because I want somebody on this, I hope the council's gonna have a chance to put somebody on this board by December. I'm not gonna wait.
Before our next board meeting, before this next board
Yeah,
meeting?
but
Okay.
I don't wanna wait that long, so if you have some thoughts, I guess you can't do it as a board, if you have some thoughts as a member, you two, it's awkward, because if I talk to you about it, then I'm done, but if you wanna send me a note or something like that, or board members wanna talk on a legal basis and make some recommendations, that'd be great. Or individually, you can send that in to the city secretary and we'll put it on there.
Well, one of the
on the
things I
agenda.
liked about Carlos, just speaking objectively for whoever comes next, is that he was representing local business. He was not on the council, and I think those would be.
We need to put another councilman on there.
Okay.
That would solve everything, we just wanna have a council meeting, we just do it all right here.
I know.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
You're so weird.
The other thing that'll be on the agenda for you.
Then we don't even have.